Too much, too much.
Too much, too much. I need it to just be right where I want it. Right there. All right. Stay put now. Oh, but then I look up and then it goes away. Ah, ooh, ha, there we go. Well, since survey says you're better at the introduction and the conclusion and the funniness and
the reading of questions.
The reading of questions, it sounds like...
basically, it sounds like you're just my sidekick.
And...
and I'm better at shocking you.
Okay, so this week on Kat the Dog Trainer's You Ask, We Answer.
With my assistant, the guy with the pink gun.
Assistant to the assistant, probably more realistically.
Assistant to Quest, cuddled over there. We were going to answer as many questions as we can. We got another huge number of questions and some really, really good ones that, since I'm in charge of asking and reading all of them, I'm going to try and get through as many as I can.
If this is your first time to the channel, guys, hit the subscribe button so that you don't, well, if it's your first time to the channel, welcome to the channel. And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything that comes out in the future.
Okay. We're going to get started right away with a very good question from dburgett11_24 from Instagram. Why don't you all do anything with NADKC or NAVHDA?
You want this one or you want me to take it?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. First of all, we do quite a bit with NAVHDA, the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. So that one is there.
So maybe there was misunderstanding.
A little misunderstanding.
Because we've talked about that before in some other stuff. YAWAs, etc. Go ahead and finish the question.
Thank you. The NADKC, though, is a really good question. And I think it's probably one that can be touched on from a pretty common misconception. But NADKC is the North American Deutsche Kurzhaar Club. Is it C?
Yeah.
Yeah. Club. So you're talking about DKs, which are not the same as American bred German Shorthairs. So that is one that we like to draw the conclusion to. They definitely breed for different things. They have different goals. They have different design. And
different registries.
Different registries. It's a whole different program. And DKs are as much a different breed as looking at a short hair and a wire hair, in my opinion.
Yes, and I think that...
Or a short hair and a setter. I mean, they look similar. They are different dogs, bred for different things.
Yes, and they look similar, and that's where I think people get confused, and they kind of sound the same, because... Deutsche Kurzhaar.
And people often describe them as, oh, they're just German Shorthairs. No, they're not. They're DKs.
And they have different temperaments and personalities. So definitely if you're thinking about getting one, make sure that they are the right breed for you and you don't think you're just getting a short hair.
Yeah, and not just, I mean, this is not saying that there's anything wrong with them or that they're bad or anything else. They're just different. So I would say that typically what you're going to see is a stronger, typically a little bit stronger prey drive, and that even geared a little more towards fur. Those are going to be the biggest differences, I think, with. And
then that level of drive and desire to go out, catch and kill some furred creature, which could potentially be another of your smaller pets, like another cat or a smaller dog. You have to watch for that.
Or a kitty.
Did I say that?
No, you said pet or a smaller dog.
I meant cat. Whatever. Meow. And that also can overlay that strong determination and desire to also just being a little bit more persistent of a personality that needs a little more handling when it comes to obedience. So
good dogs, just different. Know what you're getting into.
Yes. Next question from RedHub1 on Instagram. My GSP is 4 months old and has an annoying behavior. He whines about everything. If the other dog is in our house and runs away from him, he whines. If I walk away, he whines. If he wants to come in the house, he whines. I try not to give him anything, including attention, when he whines, but he won't stop the behavior. Help, please. This is a good question. And it sounds like your puppy is ready for a challenge. He's 4 months old. Typically for our development process with our puppies, that means that they are becoming much more bold and confident, and they just need more, whether that's training or exercise, mental stimulation, all of the above. And they might just be bored and trying to find a way for you to interact with them and for them to not be left out of the situation because they want to do something else.
Yeah, that that need for mental advancement is often something that's seen. We try and use real world examples with it, with as many situations as possible, because I think it helps better connect to the dog, and it may be something that people are more familiar with. And I think that it's often the same with children. When you look at children that fall into that higher tier of intelligence level or development, if they're not challenged, that intelligence and everything else can be misdirected. So you have a little kid that's in first grade or second grade or something. That's typically that elementary age is when you see a lot of these kind of things. Kids acting out and wants attention or whatever and isn't being challenged. So his brain is allowed to wander to different things, allowed to wander to different things. Now, one specific example, and this one is to tease Kat a little bit. So when she was a little girl.
Oh, you're going to tell a little story about me.
Yes.
I love it.
When she was a little girl, I believe she fell into that category of smart, excelling at everything that happened in, I don't know what grade this was in.
I think it was first grade.
First grade. Okay. So she's in first grade and she, star student, doing all the things, really, really well off from the first grade level of things in first grade. But there was another little boy or little girl.
I can't remember. There was another student in the class that needed some extra help and got a paraprofessional to sit next to them during class and to help them with schoolwork. And
so all of a sudden, Kat's mom and dad get a phone call that's, hey, is anything happening at home or is everything all right? Because, Katie, which she was referred to at the time, has really started to struggle with all of her schoolwork. Well, that was a shocker to mom and dad, because Katie's been really good with everything. And that's a pretty abrupt change on things were good and bad. And she just, probably wasn't being challenged as much as she could have potentially, and went, that looks like it would be more fun to have a friend sit and help me with my schoolwork.
And how do I get a friend to sit next to me?
I have to look like I need additional help. So I stop doing my schoolwork and or doing well in my schoolwork, and then I'll get more help and I'll have a friend that sits with me. So that's just an example of an intelligent mind that had the opportunity to see around the general consensus of what was supposed to be done and look for another alternative that ends up being some form of cry for attention or more or less acting out in a way. So the same thing can happen with these dogs. Your puppy is ready for more, ready for something, and challenging them is what's going to help them to continue to progress.
Hopefully we get another question later on that I can reveal a story about Ethan. So next question from Banjo_GWP, German Wirehair Pointer, from Instagram. Does the DT Systems 1400 add-on collar work with the DT 1450? I am trying to figure out what setup I need to start WOA training in the future.
That is a great question. And the answer is currently yes. All of the 1400 series collars can interchangeably sync. You will lose some of the features, but the similar buttons on the transmitters do the similar things. So on your 1400, you have a nick and a continuous button and a vibrate button. All three of those functions will work on the 1450 as well. So if you sync a 1400 collar to a 1450 transmitter, you'll get nick and continuous and vibrate. Now, what you don't get, which is the beeper button on your 1400 series, that beeper button is actually the jump function. So you won't get jump anymore when you hit the same button on the 1450 transmitter. That is programmed to send a signal to a beeper. So that portion won't work. But currently, yes, you can sync a 1400 to a 1450 collar. And that's often a combo that we recommend for people that are just starting out, looking at what collar should I get? Because it's a really good option, bang for your buck. You get one transmitter, you get the 1400 collar that can be used around the house and in an earlier stage because it gets smaller for your young puppy.
Because that beeper on the 1450 collar, it's not movable. It's fixed. It's welded into a specific point on the collar, and it can't get any smaller than a certain size. And for young puppies in that 12 to 16 weeks, when we start, you know, recommending that you can start collar conditioning, that beeper collar isn't probably going to fit them.
Yeah, and then even when it does down the road, you still got the opportunity to not use the beeper collar at home where you may accidentally hit that beeper and blow everybody's eardrums out in the house because in that confined environment, it's pretty loud. So,
as well as people like the aesthetics look of having the nice, smooth collar without the big beeper hanging around the house.
Now, being in touch with the guys there at DT Systems, they said that won't always work when they get new batches of parts and stuff like that. Sometimes there's the potential to lose that backward cross compatibility. But I made a mention to him that it was pretty important for some people to be able to do that. So he said they'll try.
And one thing to keep in mind is to turn on your 1400 collar. There's actually a little spot on the side that you use a magnet to turn it on. And the transmitter on a 1400 has a spot on the transmitter that has a magnet. So you just need a small little magnet to turn your collar on and off so that you can use them together.
Those magnets used to be in the 1450 transmitters as they transferred the base across because it's the exact same piece. But then in a newer batch, they actually removed the magnet from the 1450s, and I asked for them to put it back in. So when that changeover will happen, I don't know how many thousands or tens of thousands of units they created. But he said that they will be planning on putting the magnet back in as far as I recollect. So
yes, but that system would work really well for you to be able to have a dual system for WOA training as well.
Yep. One transmitter, two collars. Key.
Yes. So great question. Next question from Brittany Stamp. Brittany Stamp, if I could read. Maybe Ethan should read these. Just kidding. Do you two train all the dogs by yourselves? If not, how many trainers do you have? This was from Instagram.
That is an awesome question. The answer is no, we do not train all of the dogs by ourselves. We have a very, 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 very good team of help right now.
And we've worked with them over the course of years to develop the ability to read dogs and train with the same ideals and philosophy as we do. And we have a couple people that help with obedience only. And then we also have another trainer that does a lot of the field work as well.
Yep. So our team, I think, is a big, big, big part of the ability that we have to turn out such an awesome finished dog or a finished product, if you will, at the end of the training program, because they get the opportunity to listen and handle for multiple people, which we talk a lot about generalizing training. And that involves taking a training session, you know, that you typically are doing here in the yard, this controlled environment, and then taking them out to the field or taking them to a new environment where they have to work through new distractions and new areas. And the same type of thing can happen when you just switch handlers. Dogs build a ton of respect around an individual person, and being able to say, okay, you do well here, now go to a new handler and learn it again, makes it that much easier to transfer that back to owners when the dogs go home. So.
100%. As well as we're doing all these videos, we've got a lot going on. There is no way that we can do all of that. There's not enough hours in the day and train every single dog every single day that walks through the door.
Without our team, we definitely would not be able to provide this stuff for y'all.
For sure. Okay, from Nima K5 on Instagram. My 7-month-old wire hair pointing Griffon isn't motivated by bumpers for retrieving even after I've done the full trained retrieve. Is it okay to give treats for retrieves? It seems that works much better and makes him run to the bumper rather than prance over to it.
How old was the Griffon?
7-month-old.
7-month-old.
So if you've gone through the entire trained retrieve process, which is something that we typically don't recommend doing until the dog's actually closer to a year-old for mental maturity and the ability to handle that level of training, it usually, if you go through a lot of those steps with a younger dog, you're not truly conditioning the trained retrieve process. I did it with our puppy Nix back in the day and went through all the steps. That dog loved to retrieve. So I was basically just conditioning some of the finer points of a hold and, you know, coming back with it and things like that and going and picking something up on cue. But I didn't actually get to the point where I was proofing that process at that young of an age because he was only 6 months old. And then as he got older and we had to push a little bit in some of the more advanced training and testing things that we were doing, I was able to see a few holes that popped up and I had to go back and revisit my trained retrieve once he was older. So if you've gone through the entire process with your 7-month-old, you probably did a very basic conditioning process and it isn't truly a fully proofed trained retrieve and would need to be revisited. But again, you're going to want to wait until they're a little bit older than just 7 months old to do that. However, if you're getting a good response with treats and building that excitement and drive to go out and make those retrieves for you, that's not a bad thing either. Ethan and I like to say, you know, if it's working for you and you're getting the desired results, then it's not wrong. We usually don't incorporate treats when we're doing retrieving drills because that puppy can a lot of times anticipate getting that food reward when they come back to us. So they're immediately trying to get that bumper out of their mouth so they can put a treat in their mouth. And that's not something that we want to condition. We want to condition a nice natural hold. So we don't usually do it with treats. But if it's working for you, like I said, that doesn't mean it's wrong.
Now, a couple things to add to this, and please, all of you Griff lovers out there, hear the words that I'm saying. Don't take offense to this. You have a Griff, which means that you need to probably pump the brakes just a little bit because most of them are slower to mature. This is not saying that they lack ability or desire or any of the other categories. They're just typically a little slower to come around. So it may just be that you're excited about having your new puppy, but I mean, for the average Griff that I've worked with, I would not consider formal retrieving work of any kind necessary part of the process at that young of an age. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, but definitely I would assume that just kind of keeping on that path of developing good behaviors, and if you're seeing results with treat training, even if that involves some dropping, that's better than not seeing desire to retrieve at all. So,
and just don't overdo it with a young puppy that age. Retrieving, you know, if they get bored with it, well, then it's not a fun process anymore and you're not going to continue to make progress.
Too much of anything can be bad. And I would say that in general, with a little Griff, you probably just need to take a deep breath and slow your process down just a smidge.
Yeah. Great question. Next question from Jared Jackson 13 on Instagram. I have a 10-month-old female GSP that is pretty much fully crate trained, I would say, but there's sometimes when she doesn't feel like being in there, she will start chewing and ripping up her blanket we have in there for her. What would you recommend doing to get her to stop that? I know she doesn't necessarily need it in there, but was curious if you had any ideas of how to stop that other than just taking it out. Thank you guys. Love the videos. Take it out.
Yeah, that's kind of it. It's all stemmed from boredom or trying to entertain herself when she is a young dog. Now, when she gets older, you'll probably be able to re-put bedding back in, depending on if a really strong behavior is developed to just destroy everything in the crate or not. But for the most part, yeah, just take it out.
And the other thing that I caution you about when a dog starts ripping up and chewing up bedding and things like that is there's the potential that they can ingest some of that bedding and you won't maybe necessarily know that they got anything in there. If it's a fluffy bed, they eat some of that stuffing, or they shred a towel into 1,000 little pieces. Well, how much of it did they eat? Do you need to like lay it all out and make a puzzle and go, oh, we're missing a huge piece? Because that can cause a bowel obstruction and can be very dangerous for your dog. So if they're truly chewing things up and ripping things up, it might just be better and safer for them to not have something in their crate at all.
Yeah, we actually dealt with this firsthand, and it was kind of one of the last times that we truly utilized or attempted to utilize bedding.
In a crate, yeah.
Yeah, and granted, when I go guiding, we're in the box and there's a lot of bouncing around and it's usually a little cooler. So I have bedding in there, like big dog beds in there for them to lay on. Some people use hay or straw, but it always makes a giant mess for me. So these dog beds, though, are, again, mature adult dogs that have just hunted and they're worn out.
And they're not bored.
They're not bored, and they leave them alone. But if they get a few days off, even then, that's when it's like, I should have pulled the dog beds because somebody chewed one up or something. But long story short, we used wet mutt mats. It's kind of like a denser foam, rubber foam type of material.
Cell, so it's not supposed to absorb anything for odors and bacteria.
And we got those. I thought, hey, I'll give it a try. This is going
to be great. Yeah. The dogs will have something cushiony to lay on in their crate. They're not supposed to be able to chew these up. Perfect.
Yeah, first week we had a dog chew up a chunk, swallow too big a piece, end up with a bowel obstruction, and he had to have a pretty good portion of his bowel resected during that process.
But he fully recovered, which was lucky, but that could have definitely gone the other direction.
Yeah. So pull the bedding if there's chewing happening. If your dog doesn't chew up bedding, leave the bedding. It's not a big deal. So
one more question for this part?
Yeah.
Okay. From Clayton Poindexter. Oh, Clayton Poindexter.
Yeah. Clayton's asking questions before, I think.
From Instagram, we are looking into doing obedience training with a local trainer who wants us to teach sit. 16-week GSP without any field bird work yet. Want to make sure it won't cause issues with WOA. What are your thoughts?
It's a great question and a huge misconception in the bird dog world. I think that all of that will stem. I want to start with the misconception portion and what it probably all stems from. One of which is that when the average old-timey bird dog guy started teaching WOA to dogs that hadn't already known how to sit, I think that the average person's teaching methods lacks something. The average bird dog guys lacks something to be desired. You know, there's more of a...
It's more of a forcing and breaking mentality instead of a teaching and conditioning process.
And when you have a dog that gets put in that situation, they start to feel some uncertainty, especially in that crossover period from I know nothing about WOA to now I know WOA. They get there with most dogs. They get there, but there's a lot of uncertainty in that middle area of, am I doing it right? I'm not really sure what's going on here.
What is truly being asked of me?
What am I supposed to be doing? I don't even know.
So they revert to a default
yes.
of what they are familiar and comfortable with and that they have exhibited in the past and potentially been rewarded for.
Especially in that uncertainty. They're like, I don't know, but I know that this worked before. Sit down, let's try it. And no, that wasn't right. And then sometimes that, you know, earns another correction. Like, I told you not to sit down or whatever. And then that, you know, kind of compounds that uncertainty problem.
That confusion, yes.
So that being said, moving forward, anything that's overdone is a problem. Anything that becomes a default is the word Kat used and what we often use. So if you're seeing this behavior automatically without question or without request,
without even asking for the behavior,
that becomes a default. Now, if sitting becomes a default, some people go, "Oh, that's so good. They're behaving so well." Yes and no. They're starting to do this as an automatic response to nothing.
Everything.
Yep. Everything and nothing at the same time. So no stimulus and every situation, which then when you move into WOA training or you move into birds or you move into anything else, they feel like sitting is the answer to get the next reward. So watching your training and seeing if you start to see defaults in any behavior, it's not going to be good because they're going to try and revert to those things if there's ever a question in what you're teaching later in life. And then lastly, we teach all of our dogs to sit. So teaching sit is fine. Just make sure that they have a strong understanding of each. And when you start working on your WOA training, to do it via the way that we do, which is teaching using that positive pigeon drill. I know some people struggle to get birds or struggle to get pigeons, but it's still one of those things that it's, if you can get a hold of them, it doesn't take very many for them to start to build that understanding using positive reinforcement. And then switching over to the method that we use with a belly collar and a 2-collar system for WOA training, that makes a huge difference in being able to help through that process.
And just a couple things that I also wanted to add into the sitting behavior, being confused with the WOA behavior, is a lot of times people accidentally reinforce sitting.
That's
for
great.
WOA,
that's a huge part. Yeah.
And then you're just reinforcing the behavior that you truly didn't want to happen. So you ask for WOA, your puppy sits and you're like, good enough. Here's a treat anyway. Well, you're not jumping on me, so good enough. But you've actually asked for WOA instead of sit, or the same can be reversed, sit instead of WOA. So just make sure you're rewarding and reinforcing what you actually asked for.
Yeah, and we see it when people come in with their dogs. They've got them on a leash, and the dog's kind of excited or bouncing around a little bit, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then the dog just finally gets to the point and sits down and like, okay, good dog. You stopped moving. That was what I wanted you to do, but I'm using words and
cues
incorrectly with incorrect or confusing expectations, or, you know, it's just confusing. So we typically try and keep whoa work for the field, not whoaing them all around the house and the yard and everything else. Keep whoa work for that, and sit work for around the house. And it draws a pretty hard line of, we whoa in the field, we sit around the house and yard. And if you kind of maintain that consistency, it helps a lot too.
And then finally, the last thing that I want to add to this is we typically also don't collar condition our sit behaviors, especially with young dogs, until we've had a very successful collar condition to whoa behavior.
True.
Because again, there can be sometimes that confusion of, I feel the pressure, and the same pressure is on their neck for both whoa and sit. And there can sometimes be that confusion. Whereas, you know, we use the same collar pressure for place training or recall work, but we're giving them different body language and cues as well that they can key off of. You know, we're walking towards a dog bed and saying kennel, or we're getting down in an inviting position or giving them a target for the recall. Well, sometimes with sit and whoa, you're just standing there and asking them for that behavior. And then they're like, they're standing here. That's when I sit. Or, oh, they're standing there. That's when I whoa. And if you don't try and collar condition both, especially at the same time, I think that your confusion level will be much less.
Well, guys, one more quick question turned into, and one more thing, and one more thing, and one more thing, which is what we try and do. We just try and get as much information as we can out to all of y'all that are watching and participating in this, and we appreciate you. That is all we have for this first part. We will be back here shortly for more You Ask, We Answer with Ethan and Kat.
Kat and Ethan.
Kat and Ethan, the assistant.
Thanks for watching, guys.